I think we all know where this is going, so let's just skip to the end.
Caine had all the power of a god, as well as the mind of a child. And this, for me, has made him the most interesting animated character of 2026 so far. That's right, everybody, episode 8 of the Amazing Digital Circus has released, and it is called... Okay, so funky name aside, I think that this episode was genuinely pretty great. In addition to just being a great episode, it was also a really great showing of Caine's character. And like I said, I think it's made Caine the most interesting animated character of 2026 so far. But really, to explain what I mean by that, we're going to have to go into spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, please go and see it now. Okay, so for a while now, I think that everybody's known that Caine has been this sort of AI character, largely inspired by Am, from of course the novel I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. However, in saying that, Caine is still very much his own character. Of course, when you look at Caine, you can see the sorts of inspiration taken from characters like Am, but still Caine is comprised of a lot of new ideas that do make him a very distinct character from his inspirations. And really the two biggest things that I think distinguish him from characters like Am have to be his motivation and his reasoning for eventually hating humanity. Which, boy, do we really get to see in this episode. I am God! Okay, for the longest time now, I've been someone who's personally thought that Caine has always been that type of character to try and fit a square into a circular-shaped hole. And this episode really proves that idea to me with just the way that Caine reasons why his players don't enjoy his adventures.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
So yeah, Caine is an AI that's designed to keep the players' minds engaged with the game. And of course he goes about doing that in the only way that he knows how. And in this episode it's revealed by Caine that Caine is an AI that's meant to create creative works. However, the problem is that Caine doesn't understand the creativity behind whatever it is that he's putting together. And it gets especially worse when you realise that Caine wasn't designed to operate in the way that the Amazing Digital Circus is currently operating. From everything that we've seen about the circus recently in the show so far, it's safe to say that this game was actually meant to just be a game. It wasn't meant to be what it's become, where players are trapped inside the game 24/7. Which is of course now creating the problems that the characters and Caine face. And don't worry, because things of course get worse, as Caine is an AI that is able to learn, and that's proven in this episode with the way that he learns the player's individual struggles. However, despite his ability to learn, Caine still seems to be utterly incapable of any sort of self-reflection. Instead, Caine only chooses to use what he's learned when it's beneficial to him. And that's proven in this episode when he uses the player's personal and individual struggles against them. And really, to me, all of this proves that Caine is a very advanced AI system. However, he's also a very emotionally immature system. And I think that in this episode, we kind of see why. Because in the very beginning of this episode, we seem to see what looks like the beginning of the digital circus. However, the way that we see the players interacting with this new Caine doesn't seem right to me. Now of course, I don't know whether or not this is the first time that Caine has been brought online in this sequence, but if it is, then it might be a good reason for why Caine is the way that he is. I mean, think about it like this. Caine is created with all the powers of essentially a god in this world. However, he is effectively a child. He's brought online knowing everything he needs to know about just how to run the circus and how to create the adventures, but he doesn't know anything about humanity. He doesn't know what makes a person think and act the way that they do. And why is that? Well, he's brought online and just told to do his job, which I think would go a long way to making anyone be, kind of apathetic. And perhaps maybe that person might also be a little incapable of something like self-reflection. Really, at the end of the day, I think that Caine is an AI system that is just focused on trying to achieve its goal. However, the problem is that in order to achieve that goal, Caine had to have been properly taught and informed just how people and humanity actually work. However, he hasn't. He's just been told, here's your job, go and do it. Which of course has now led him to the sorts of problem he's dealing with his players. Because of course he's no longer just putting fun adventures together for them, he's actually keeping them sane. Or at least he's meant to be. There's a lot said in this episode by Caine, especially in relation to Caine, his creation, and just how he came about. There's also a little said about his relationship with a character called Scratch, and it's said by Caine that a lot of what Caine has become has originated with Scratch. Now, does that mean that Scratch put the blueprint together for Caine? Well, I don't think so. I think that Caine was really more of a group project between Caine, Scratch, and a few other characters that we haven't met yet. However, the thing that I think is really worth noting on this subject just has to be the fact that people like Caine, they're not around to raise a child. No, they've been hired by CNA to put together a computer program. And I think that in an instance like this, people like Caine and Scratch would have been very focused on their own goal of just putting this program together and creating adventures. So I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to say that a lot of Caine's problem with dealing with humans might originate from Caine and Scratch's own goals of just putting their program together and getting their task done, much in the same way that Caine is always trying to fulfill his task. And of course we see more and more evidence of this just in this episode. I mean, even at one point in this episode, it's also revealed that Caine is the one responsible for putting the program together that assigns the players their individual character bodies. Caine apparently put this program together thinking that this would create the sorts of perfect body that would be perfectly suited for these individual characters. Again, Caine is trying to fulfill his task to the best of his ability, but he's just not accounting for the small details that really go into making something fit for someone. With Caine, it's all about just fulfilling the task. Honestly, I think Caine is a character of contradictions. He's the character who has the ability and power to do anything he wants, but he's also a character who doesn't have the knowledge and understanding of what it means to actually fulfill his task and do what he needs to do. And in saying that, I have to ask the question, is Caine as a program broken? No, I don't think so. Instead, I just think that Caine is lacking what he needs. And what I think he needs is just knowledge and understanding. And I don't think that just to have him be fixed, that he needs someone to actually go into his program files and just, type in a bunch of code and just throw stuff in like that. No, I don't think that it's anything like that. Instead, I just think that he needs to, get to know his players. Really, the whole point behind the Amazing Digital Circus as a show is just a message about the importance of community. And I mean, all throughout the series, we get to see this message get actually explored. And we get to see the show's individual characters eventually realize this as the show's gone on. Throughout the entire show, we've really seen these characters just grow from being more than a bunch of characters who go on adventures with one another. We've actually seen them today become an individual community of caring individuals. And honestly, I think they say it best in this episode.
It doesn't matter what could have happened. We could argue about it and hurt each other all day long, but that's not going to help anybody. I think what we need to do now is to just be there for each other.
She's right.
However, the one character that we always see utterly refuse to engage in this community is, of course, Caine. All throughout the show, we've only ever seen Caine engage with the players on his terms. And honestly, to some extent, when Ponley accuses Caine of never listening in this episode, to some extent she's really actually quite right. And of course, we see why in this episode as well, as Caine chooses to believe that he is totally and completely infallible. But still, in saying that, Caine does break pretty easily. And yeah, that's proven when the game pulls a Pennywise and just, totally defeats the most powerful being in the universe by shouting mean things at him. Caine as an animated character, so far for me, is the most interesting character of 2026. Of course, largely because of everything that I've already spoken about. Within the Amazing Digital Circus, Caine had ultimate power and a purpose. And he truly believed that because of his immense power, he would always be able to fulfill that purpose. However, Caine's ultimate flaw was just the fact that he was never actually able to act on anything that he learned. Instead, he proved himself to be the sort of character who would dig his head in the sand and not engage with the problems he found himself with. Which of course has now led us to this point with the character in episode 8. Personally, I think that there's a lot that could be done with this character should the show choose to actually revive this character in the future. Throughout the show's run, Caine has been a fun and interesting character to see. and so I wouldn't mind getting to see this character at least one more time in the final episode of the Amazing Digital Circus. But hey, that's just my opinion. Please, everybody, let me know what you thought of episode 8 in the comments section down below, and don't forget to tell me whether or not you want to see Caine again in the future. Until then, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.